Why the family of the alleged Boston Strangler is livid about plans to exhume his body. Plus,
we don't have a bar and we don't have wine, and it hurts us.
Some Boston restaurateurs say they aren't getting a fair shake. And she has a way with words.
Just set your bread on the waters, it comes back buttered.
Jared Bowen sits down with the one and only Olympia Dukakis, now on Greater Boston. Good evening, the Boston Strangler, a.k.a. Albert DeSalvo. But are they really the same person? Today, 50 years after the Strangler's reign of terror began, law enforcement officials announced they would exhume the body of Albert DeSalvo in order to answer once and for all whether he was the man responsible for the gruesome murder of a dozen women in the 1960s. It was the afternoon of January 4th, 1964. A city on edge learned that the Boston Strangler had struck again, taking the life of 19-year-old Mary Sullivan. She had been raped and killed inside her Charles Street apartment. When police finally apprehended Albert DeSalvo, he confessed to being the Strangler and murdering Sullivan. But doubts over DeSalvo's confession have dogged the case for years.
We don't believe that Albert DeSalvo killed Mary, and we believe that her killer is still out there.
Mary Sullivan's nephew, Casey Sherman, was unconvinced DeSalvo was the killer when he examined the case evidence 15 years ago. Albert DeSalvo's brother also provided DNA for testing in 2001, but those tests proved inconclusive until today.
Today we announce a major development.
Suffolk County DA Dan Conley made the surprise announcement that new testing found a match.
Advances in the sensitivity of DNA testing have allowed us to make a familial match between biological evidence recovered from the crime scene and a suspect in Mary Sullivan's murder. That suspect is Albert DeSalvo.
Armed with a preliminary DNA match, Conley's office will exhume DeSalvo's body for definitive testing. The sudden development left Casey Sherman stunned.
I've lived with Mary's memory every day, and it's taken 49 years for police to legitimately say they got their man, and they'll probably be able to say that very soon. And I want to thank them for their diligence and their persistence in this case.
And joining me now is attorney Elaine Whitfield Sharp, who is representing the DeSalvo family. Welcome, Elaine.
Thank you, Emily.
You've been working this case a long, long time. So you just got a call yesterday. Yes. What did they tell you was going on?
2 p.m. yesterday, I got a call. I was in the middle of a deadline from the Suffolk County DA's office, from First Assistant DA Patrick Hagan. I called back, and he told me that there had been what he termed a significant development in the Mary Sullivan investigation, murder investigation. Well, of course, I was unaware that any investigation was ongoing. This has been half a century now, and you know, we have been trying for a long time to cooperate with the authorities in terms of an investigation. So I was surprised when I got the call. They asked if I would come down with the family of Albert DeSalvo to meet with them this morning, and said there was going to be a press conference in what they said was the afternoon. They swore us to secrecy. Of course, I agreed. We went down, but at 5 a.m. this morning I got a call that somebody from the Boston Police Department had leaked the story, and so we walked into a bank of cameras. I did not take Richard with me. I thought it would be too stressful for him.
Richard is brother.
So I went down, yes. Richard is Albert's brother, correct.
So
that's when I found out, was just yesterday at 2 o'clock.
And when did they tell you that they were going to exhume the body, and do they need your permission for that?
Well, apparently we would have given it had we been asked, but we were not asked. And we found out about that this morning. And for the first time.
Are you going to go along with it?
Well, at this point, it's going to be difficult to contest it because of the timing. We found out this morning that it was going to be exhumed by the end of the week. Well, this morning was Thursday, and tomorrow is Friday. That's the end of the week. So my guess is they're planning to do it tomorrow. It has to be done within 7 days of the issuance of the order by the court. Apparently, they went to a Suffolk County judge and convince that judge that it was probable cause that Albert DeSalvo was the murderer of Mary Sullivan, and they got the judge to issue an order based on that probable cause to exhume.
The interesting thing in this case is that there's enough DNA evidence left from the Mary Sullivan crime scene in order to make a match with whatever's left of the remains of Albert DeSalvo, which is not the case in the others. So this is the only one that they can really go after, right?
That's not what they've told me. Jerry Leone in 2002 told me that they had they had slides of trace evidence from 6 of the crime scenes. So there are, in fact, other slides available.
Have those been made matches yet, do you know?
No, not that I know. Today they told us there were no such slides. We've had very inconsistent information about the existence of trace evidence from the crime scene.
I went back and read some of the court dialogue between Albert DeSalvo's very flamboyant attorney, F. Lee Bailey, who everybody knows from the O.J. case, but he was telling the court the kind of things that Albert DeSalvo was telling him, detailing how he killed these women, the nylons, the horrible things he did to mutilate the bodies. But you're not convinced. You think maybe it was just all...
What doesn't convince me are today's DNA results that Albert is the killer, and here's why. These DNA results come from what's called Y chromosome DNA, which is a male form of DNA passed from father to son, and that DNA was in her mouth, if you will. The independent forensic team of James Starrs, Michael Barden, and Henry Lee, heavy hitters in the forensic community, exhumed Mary in 2000, and yes, it was October of 2000, and they found material in her pubic area using a UV light. It lit up like Paris. I was there. It was amazing. They found this material that was very rich in what is called mitochondrial DNA, and sperm is very rich in mitochondrial DNA. They tested that material, and it was not a match for Albert. So to say that the DNA in Mary's mouth means that they claim is a match to Albert means that Albert killed her, when there is DNA in the pubic area that doesn't match Albert, it doesn't make sense to me forensically.
Will anything convince you if they go back at this DNA testing? Will you be convinced?
I think if they found it on other bodies, perhaps, that would be convincing. But we can't say because there's a DNA deposit, if you will, by Albert onto Mary, that therefore Albert killed her in the presence of other DNA. There's somebody else still at large. And that's our position.
Yeah, well, that's definitely Casey Sherman's position. And by the way, we invited Casey today. He's just very distraught, very emotional, as you can see from the tape, because he's been convinced for so many years that, frankly, it was the boyfriend, and it was still out there.
Right, who is still out there.
Yeah.
And by the way, we did test his DNA, and it was a match.
For the pubic area?
For the pubic area, yes. But it was.
But how would you explain Albert DeSalvo's DNA in her mouth? I mean.
Well, clearly, if that's the case, then Albert DeSalvo was present there, and they had some sort of a sexual exchange. That doesn't mean he was the killer, and I say that because of the other DNA.
Yeah, but
and I did ask Martha Coakley.
If the other guy was her boyfriend, I mean.
Right, doesn't mean that's right. That's correct, but it's still not definitive.
But they didn't say he was a murderer. They just said it was a DNA match, which is pretty dramatic.
Well, I think they were saying he was the killer of Mary Sullivan. That was the conclusion from today's press conference. And I hate to rain on their parade, but, you know, if we're searching for the truth, then we're searching for the whole truth. And that's what the DeSalvos have always been interested in.
I mean,
well,
are they okay?
Want closure as much as anybody.
So they want to know whether he did this stuff or not.
They do. They do. But they want the process to be fair and open and transparent. And for the last 50 years, it hasn't been. And, you know, now 2 hours before the press conference to suddenly say, well, everything's transparent now, it's not very satisfying to them, particularly when, number one, they put Tim DeSalvo under surveillance He's never committed a crime in his life, and took his DNA surreptitiously from a bottle from which he was drinking. And then secondly, when we have offered to work with them and give them samples of Albert's DNA, they are now going to exhume him without even asking for our consent.
Are you suspicious at all about the timing of this with the upcoming mayoral election and Dan Conley front and center?
Yes, unfortunately I am. Of course. Yes, I am. This is politics, and I think this has hounded and infected the integrity of this case since it began. It's the politicization of the criminal justice system, and particularly this high-profile case. Everybody, wants a piece of it. So much so that people's careers were made and destroyed based on this case way back when, and even today it seems to be continuing.
It's no end of interest in it, right?
That's right.
Thank you so much
for
coming,
having me.
Whitfield Sharp. Thank you.